Hi, I'm Marie. I am just getting over a cold, so I apologize if my voice is odd. But as I was just introduced, I am Marie. I run a start-to-finish grass-fed beef operation in Blaine, and I started it from the ground up. I am a first-generation farmer here in Whatcom County. Yes, thank you. I was crazy and decided that I wanted to be a farmer, and knew that it was going to be really hard. Didn't know that it was going to be as hard as it turns out it is. Anyhow, I am afflicted by a few different mental health issues that I have struggled with all of my life. I have a persistent depressive disorder, which is just basically I'm depressed most of the time. I also have major depression, which likes to flare up every now and then where things just get really bad and are really challenging and difficult to deal with. It's usually spurred on by some major event that's, extra difficult to deal with, which interestingly enough happens a lot in farming. So, fun times for me. I also have generalized anxiety disorder, so I get very anxious about all sorts of things, and it just will happen out of the blue. And turns out, also happens a lot in farming. So good choice for a career for me. However, I also really love it because it's an interesting job, and it does provide a lot of joy for me when it's not providing a lot of problems for me too. So, on a farm, there's obviously lots of things that happen and people deal with. It can either be really great or really challenging, or both at the same time. So one of those things obviously is like the life journey or birth and death. So on my farm, because I'm a livestock producer, that's pretty much all year round. I calve in the spring and we slaughter year round. So I see lots of life happening and I see lots of life ending. And I see lots of life ending periodically that is not planned. It's not slaughter, it's accidents, or animals have health challenges and pass away, or things like that. And as a person who does this job because I really love animals, that starts taking a heavy toll, or can start taking a heavy toll on a person like me, or probably pretty much anybody that does this as a job. Other things that happen are like, weather challenges, of affecting your everyday existence out there slogging through stuff, or affecting your feed production. So like last spring, it was just like the rain never stopped, and that put hay harvest back really far. Normally I get 3 cuttings off of my hay field. I got 2. The first one was huge, and the grass was coarse and terrible, and had gone to seed already by the time we could get the first cutting off. And then my second cutting was just puny as can be and hardly got anything, and that has made this winter's feed a big challenge. So my cattle aren't growing as well as they normally would through the winter because my feed quality wasn't as good, and that starts really, affecting things because you're stressing out about, are they going to make weight for butcher, all of those kinds of things. And then also just, when the snow happens and there's, 10 times as much work as normal and all that kind of stuff. So weather can really start playing havoc. And then sometimes you have beautiful days and you're out there, this is the best job ever. I love being out, in the sunshine and in the nice, I'm so glad I chose this job. So definitely, yin and yang for sure. And then the next thing is markets, finding, where you're gonna sell your product and who you're gonna sell it to. It isn't, simple as your beef is ready to be sold and there's magically, customers to buy it. It's doing, online marketing, it's doing face-to-face marketing, it's answering phone calls and emails and text messages, and people want answers like right then and don't realize that even though they have access to you, you're a person and you're not available all of the time. And so that can really start getting, weighing on you and getting irritating, honestly, when people want answers at 9 o'clock at night on a Sunday. And you're thinking like, well, I'll get back to you tomorrow. And also just finding outlets to sell things, and that doesn't matter if you're producing beef or selling flowers or whatever. You have to find somewhere to sell those if you're wanting a profitable business. Next thing, for me, processing can be a really difficult challenge. Finding processors to process my beef. I have scheduled. Basically, when my calf crop is born each year, I am scheduling 2 years out for who's going to be slaughtered 2 years from now, and I'm making those slaughter dates with my processor because it's so far out. You have to do that, otherwise you end up getting stuck with beef and having nowhere to go with it other than maybe selling it at the auction where you're not going to make as much money. So processing is a big bottleneck here, and definitely something that is a challenge. Also, we do some USDA beef, and we are very lacking in USDA processors in Northwest Washington. And so one of the things that was a very big challenge for me was deciding to go ahead and be okay with the fact that I have to haul some of my animals to be slaughtered. Whereas before, I wasn't willing to do that because I didn't like the idea that they were stressed out before slaughter. Now I have to haul to a USDA slaughter facility in order to keep my farm relevant and in order to sell enough product that I can keep running my farm. And that's a hard thing to do when you are doing something for a specific reason. Like, I am doing this because I really care about the animals and I really care about how they're treated, and having to make that decision that they now have to sit in a trailer for 3 hours before they go to slaughter, that was a hard decision to make for me, and that has really weighed on my mind and on my heart, but had to be done in order to keep my farm going. So sometimes you have to make these decisions that you really don't want to make because it's necessary. Other things are infrastructure. So when your barn starts falling apart, or a panel blows off in some big windstorm and you suddenly have a big hole in your barn roof, or something's happening and you have to deal with that kind of thing, and you always have to be able to pivot and be ready and have that expense weighing on your mind, because it's part of running a farm. It's not all, rainbows and butterflies all the time. There's all this stress and all these things that happen and start building on each other. Machinery breaks down, or you don't have the right piece of machinery and you have to find it from somebody, or you've hired somebody to come make hay for you and their machinery breaks down. I mean, it's just compounds, and really starts to weigh. And then there's the really fun one. The regulations and the laws and the rules that are always changing, and you always have to be on top of, and you always have to understand, and it's almost impossible because it's changing and being different every single month. It feels like you think you're doing the right thing and then, oh, nope, you're not. Here, you got to do this. Or you decide to do something and you go to do it, and there's 6 hoops that you have to jump through before you can do that thing. And as you're jumping through the hoops, oh, there's also this other hoop over here before you can jump through that one, and that usually costs a lot of extra money too. And it's just all these things all the time. And you just sometimes get to thinking like, how am I gonna do this? How am I gonna get through this? And how am I gonna focus on what I need to do to get it done when I have all of these challenges in my face all of the time and just trying to get through my day? It can be kind of difficult. Oops, we went way too far. Hold on, I get back. Sorry, I'm not a tech person. Okay, so that's where we come to the balance in farming. We have all of these things that are really heavy, weighing on our minds, and all of these stresses and all of these things. And I swear that farming is just this it's just like a magnifying glass on all of those things, and it's like a microcosm of all of that. You end up having a lot of, I do a lot of lonely feelings. I feel isolated a lot of the times because I'm working on my farm and I'm oftentimes the only one there, and I don't see anybody for a lot of the day or days, and I'm just there, talking to the animals. That can start getting a little bit much for me. And at the same time, there's a big, wide farming community out here where you can feel a lot of sense of belonging once you start knowing people, and once you start making connections, and once you start doing things. For me, joining organizations, volunteering to do things so that I can meet other people in the farming community, selling at the farmers market, and meeting other farmers like the Steensmas, and making those connections and making those contacts. So on one part, I feel, really lonely and isolated, and on the other hand, there's this wonderful sense of community and belonging if you know where to find it and you're willing to, which sometimes has been a challenge for me. When I'm feeling really depressed, I don't necessarily want to be out, making contacts and being social. That can be really difficult. Obviously, like we're talking about, there's a lot of stress and anxiety involved with farming, and that just really can feel like 90% of what you do every day. And at the same time, there's a lot of happiness and fulfillment that happens, like in the spring when it's baby season. The babies are wonderful. Also a lot of extra stress when we're calving, and there can be problems that arise and things like that, but it's also the most wonderful thing when you see that little life, that's all wet and gooey, trying to stand up for the first time and making it and doing, you just want to hooray. And then seeing it nurse for the first time and knowing that little guy is going to do okay, or that, that little one's going to be fine. And that just brings such a sense of joy into my heart watching that happen. It for a moment makes all of the other things go away for me, and I think to myself, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing right here. The fact that that little guy is just born, and his mom is happy and is licking him, and there's this wonderful thing just happened. I love that. I live for that every year. I slog through this time of year so I can see those little babies be born. It's my favorite thing. Oh yes, social media. So I'm sure all of us are on social media, or a lot of us are, or we at least know about it. This can be really difficult. I have had my own issues with this, wanting to compare myself, wanting to do better because I see someone else's pictures or whatever. And it's just a joy killer. It's so easy to look at other people's life from this tiny little pictures on a screen and think I'm not doing a good enough job. I'm not as good as them because I didn't take such a beautiful picture. And I must not sell as much as them because they take this amazing picture of their product, so that must mean that they're really good at doing this. Not necessarily. Just because you're good at taking pictures and you're good at marketing on social media doesn't make you a better farmer. It doesn't make you any better than anybody else other than you're good at marketing. So I encourage you, if you're beginning farming and you are on social media, that you try not to compare yourself to what you're seeing other people posting. I personally don't have time to post a lot on social media. I do as much as I can, but I don't have time to do it all of the time because I'm actually out working. I'm taking care of my cattle. I'm farming. So for me, I had to step back and step away from looking at other people's stuff all the time, just simply because it wasn't good for me and I felt like I wasn't doing a good enough job. So be careful on social media, and know that you're still doing a good job, even if your Insta page doesn't look as beautiful and glorious as someone else's. It's not true. So now we're gonna get into the nitty gritty, because if there's a person that wants to talk about the elephant in the room, it's me. So this is a very boring slide, but these are signs of too much stress that you can see in other people and recognize in yourself. These are kind of like warning signs that maybe things are getting a little bit too much, and you might need to get some help. So thoughts of hurting oneself, care of your livestock declines if you're noticing like they're getting thin, or you're maybe not doing as much for them as you should be. They're not getting, kept as clean, things like that. Feeling apathetic about stuff, so not as interested in what you would normally find joy in, not as interested in doing your regular activities, just not really caring about what's happening. That's a big sign. That's a really big sign for me, especially. Having an increase in farm-related accidents, so when your mind is busy thinking about other things and being anxious and being stressed out, you're not paying as much attention to what you're doing. So you might accidentally not do the right gears on your tractor and it takes off on you, or you might have a giant bale of hay fall on you. That actually happened to me, and I got extremely injured from it several years ago. Things like that, or you're driving and you're not paying attention to what you're doing because your mind is elsewhere. These things become dangerous to you when your mind is distracted and focusing on other things. Decline in health, getting sick more often, like because you're not sleeping as much, your body isn't able to defend itself against things like colds or the flu, or just general malaise. Alcohol and substance abuse or use, if you're not somebody that normally partakes in those things and suddenly you find yourself doing that, or you find yourself doing it a little bit too much, that is generally a pretty good indication that maybe something is up. You're trying to escape and you're trying to make yourself feel better. Relational tension, so with your partner or your kids or things like that, you're crabby, you're short, you can't give as much attention and can't give as much of yourself to them because you're too busy worrying and thinking about these other things. Also, appearance of your farmstead can decline, so you're not caring as much about how your yard looks, or getting that trash away, getting all those bale wrappers that are fluttering in the wind and fly away in a windstorm, you're not getting those off the fence and like doing things with them. Those are all, that's kind of related to being apathetic, but all signs that you can notice in yourself and also in other people for sure. So the next, how to help if you are noticing these things in other people especially. Active listening is super important. So active listening is like asking open-ended questions, giving somebody the opportunity to keep talking about a thing instead of just give a question that's a yes or no answer. Repeating back what they say. They say something, okay, I heard you say this, blah, blah, blah. But being active and being present, not being on your phone, not being distracted by other things, but really listening to that person. Offering assistance, so things that you might be able to help them with, even if it's something as simple as bringing them a meal, or maybe helping shovel poop, or anything that is something that you might be able to do. If you happen to know how to milk cows and somebody needs a relief milker on their dairy because they're just having a hard time, you can offer to do that if you know how their system works. Doing errands, dropping off product to customers, anything like that. If you have a flower business, offering to do a flower delivery, or whatever it is that they might need help with, whatever you can do to help. Asking them directly if you think they're having a hard time. Ask them about it. See if you can get them to open up and share with you. It can be really difficult and that can be really uncomfortable, but a lot of times when you open that door and provide that opportunity for somebody to talk, they will. And don't be afraid that you're going to make them feel bad or something, because I guarantee if they need somebody to talk to, they will be very glad for that opportunity to talk to you. Having empathy and not sympathy. So this is a really good example. Somebody says something, you don't say, "I'm sorry, that's rough." That's being sympathetic. People need you to be empathetic. So saying something like, "That sounds really difficult and I can understand how that would make you feel. Do you want to talk about it more?" That's where that open-ended question comes in. But really trying to understand. And also suggesting resources. So places that they can find help, people that they can talk to, things like that. And if they're really having a hard time, this is the new number for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It's 988. You can text or call it. It's free and confidential, and you can get help right away from a person. So if you're in crisis, call that number. And these are some resources that can be looked up online. There's the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network, the Rural Resilience Farm Stress Training, QPR training, which I forgot to say, I am a certified in QPR, which is question and refer and persuade. And this is something that you do if you feel like somebody is in crisis. Statistics show that if somebody is feeling suicidal and is thinking about committing suicide, they have not necessarily made the decision, and you interrupting that thought process is really important for them, and don't be afraid to do it. You can easily save somebody's life by doing that and just getting involved in that moment with them. They are very highly unlikely to do it if you intervene. It's been shown to be that way. So QPR training is actually free if you just Google it. QPR training, if you're interested, it takes about an hour online to do, and Oregon State University Extension offers it for free, and they have it about once a month via a Zoom meeting, and that's what I did, and it's very helpful. It's important for farmers to know, and anybody that's related in the egg industry that's a supportive role, so veterinarians, feed suppliers, people that come out to farms, like anybody that deals with farmers and ranchers, it would be a really helpful thing to have, just because according to the CDC, farmers and ranchers have they rank 15th in most likely to commit suicide. So that's a pretty high number. And also the CDC says that in the United States, somebody commits suicide every 11 minutes, and that's really sad, especially if it's something that's preventable. Your mind is not in the right place when you're feeling suicidal, and it's totally worth sticking around. You are worth sticking around, and everybody thinks that. It's just maybe in that moment you don't. So I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Thank you. This is a tough subject. I'm so thankful to have, because your farm starts with you.
Yeah.
We need to be healthy before we can provide food for the rest of our community. I would entertain any questions that folks have for Marie now, and there will be time probably at the end as well. So you can take questions. She's also the booth together.
Yeah.
Fair Cow's Top is just right one of our exhibitors as well.
And I'm happy to talk to anybody about this, and especially if you're having a hard time and you need some support, I am happy to talk to you about that. I am easy to talk to. And I like talking.